Hello everyone, Bill here again. This is my next installment of the Bible 101. And what I want to do is basically pick up where I left off. In my first part one of, or part two of Bible 101, what I discussed was how Moses had was ordered and written down what we now know today as the Torah, and then eventually Joshua picked that up, and then he too wrote these things down, and what we later now know today as the book of Joshua. Well, the thing is that this simply began a common tradition in the Jewish faith, and throughout what we know today as both the Old and New Testament, this simply continued. Now, for Christians who really dig into the scriptures, Jesus actually railed against the scribes, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees, but there were scribes even at the time of Jesus. Throughout this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a series of a series of verses here down at the bottom. Okay, what I'm trying to illustrate here is that over and over again, throughout the Old Testament and New Testament, there were people that it was their job to write things down, and eventually the authors of these books sat down and they wrote the books that either bear their names or simply are credited for writing the books that are now in our established Bible. So the thing is that it is a well-established thing that these people wrote these things down in their lifetime, and then it later was put into what we now know today as the Bible. So it was not a new thing to write this stuff down. Now the arguments say, well, it was done after the fact or something like that. Well, I won't get into that here in this video, but there are many things to where there were simply things they did not record that they, being in their time period, would have recorded. And then, of course, it is pointed back to where we can clearly show in history that they could not have written it after the fact and like that. But then again, I will show that in another video later on, so I won't even get to that right now in this video. My main point here is that the tradition was picked up and carried forward right into the time of Christ and beyond Christ, to where the 12 apostles and Peter, Paul, all picked up their quill and wrote down what we now know today as the Bible. And again, I will show these key verses here on the screen. So the thing is that it was a tradition started with Moses and continued right through to the early church. It was written down, and then eventually it was put together into what we now know today as the Bible. And again, I will discuss that later. So my point being here is that the Bible was written by many peoples, and they were instructed to do so. They picked up this tradition, and they were very diligently copied until we got the Bible. So thank you very much, and see you all next time.